Welcome once again to another reading from the Science of Mind magazine, The Daily Guides. Or if you'd never heard it before, hey, this is a good magazine. It's been in print for almost 100 years, and every month they have a section called The Daily Guides, and there is an uplifting reading for each day of the month, 28, 29, 30, 31, depending on when the month is. So that's my intro. This month's readings are written by a gentleman by the name of Eugene Holden, and he is a religious science practitioner. So in other words, he is one of the people taught how to pray for people. Let me see. He is entitled this A Radical Shift in Consciousness. A Radical Shift in Consciousness. And the first quote is from Neville Goddard, who came from Barbados, spent most of his life in the UK after he grew up. In the US after he grew up. And he was a very well-known spiritual writer, mystic, self-help guru, who later on in life kind of moved from that self-help arena into more of an arena. Let me just get rid of this. And that. More into the arena of mysticism. So he took his focus away from pure material, which I think is where he started, and then moved gradually into the spiritual realm. And he essentially taught what Jesus taught, and it's done unto you as you believe. And he really believed it. He demonstrated some manifestations in his life. One was an air ticket to go back from New York to visit his family in Barbados when he didn't have any money to do it, but he somehow managed it. And lots of things like that. I was introduced to him through Creative Life Spiritual Center. Reverend Jesse Jennings, I think, was the one who introduced him to me. And he is a really good writer. That's Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard. He says, if I be lifted up in consciousness to the naturalness of the thing desired, I will draw the manifestation of that desire unto me. In other words, if I want something and I vividly imagine it in my consciousness and I truly believe that it's going to be delivered to me, then it will be delivered to me. That's the translation of that. And Ernest Holmes said, it is self-evident that the only God we can know is the God our consciousness perceives. The only God we can know is the God that we can imagine in our minds. And this is from Eugene. He says, now is the time for a radical shift in consciousness. No longer can the human race afford to keep seeing things from a place of separation. We've done this for far too long already. We continue to perceive wars and rumors of wars, as we have it seemed since time immemorial. And he says, as the saying goes, nothing changes if nothing changes. And he says, the teachings of Science of Mind, along with other spiritual traditions around the world, he doesn't just leave it to Science of Mind, he says, give us tools and reminders that we're all interconnected. And coming together as one is the way that we can heal this planet. There must be a radical shift in consciousness for us to experience a world that works for all. This shift in consciousness allows us to see that everyone really wants the same things. Everyone wants peace, everyone wants food, shelter, safety, and a loving community. You will come back to that, yes, but I'll come back to it. This radical shift begins with recognizing that we are all connected. I'd actually say we're all interconnected. Are you ready to make this radical shift? Are you ready to recognize the divinity in everyone, no matter what? If you're not sure of your answers, this may be an indication of the shift you are to make. Then he says, all I ask, and I would say, all that is asked of you is that you be willing to make that change. Change the way you look at things. Probably easier said than done. But one way is by hearing readings like this, reading stuff like this, being in communities that are supportive and uplifting and support the world. because we don't live in isolation anymore. Back in the Middle Ages, wherever you were, at least in Europe, I can only speak essentially for Europe, but probably in most of the world, people lived in smaller communities, especially the early Middle Ages. It's about 1,000 years ago. And people in villages probably weren't aware of anything outside of their immediate area. Most people didn't travel, they stayed where they were. Some couldn't travel because they were serfs, which is essentially, like slaves. They weren't allowed to do anything except work for their lord and so on. So it's easy to see back then that people could not perceive this interconnectedness, and even in the last century. But since then, I mean, the world is completely interconnected. There are one or two isolated tribes around the world that are still isolated from the rest of humanity. But aside from them, every country pretty well on the planet, has got access to social media of some sort, and therefore they're aware of what's going on. So we have no excuse for not knowing what's going on in other parts of the world. And you see it blasted at you on the news all the time. And if you go on social media, you'll see it there. If you go on online forums and so on, online news channels, it's all there. You can see it all going on. So what does this all come back to? Well, it comes back to the fact that I think, and this is from my teachings from being a little kid, I think that we do have a duty not only to look after ourselves, but that should come first, because you can't look after somebody else if you don't look after yourself. But we also have a duty to look after other people, I think. And charity is a horrible word sometimes, but being prepared to give some of our goods to people who are less fortunate than ourselves. And heaven knows there's lots and lots of charitable causes in this country and around the world that you can contribute to. But you can also contribute in your thoughts. And what Eugene Holden is talking about here, really and truly, is a shift in consciousness, which he says, but he also means that we're trying to move the human race towards that critical mass point where belief in ourselves as a human race and looking after everyone in the human race, takes off. The point where it just starts to take off, sometimes like this, sometimes like that. So there will come a point in human consciousness when we will actually change completely and realize that our job is not just for ourselves, our family, our tribe, quote unquote, our city, our country, but it's for the whole planet. So this is the shift in consciousness that he's talking about. He gave us 3 affirmations, but I've made them into 2 actually. Believe it or not, I actually made them less this time. I am the love of the divine, and I am one with the divine. I am the love of the divine, and I am one with the divine. I shift my consciousness to embrace the all in all. I shift my consciousness to embrace the all in all. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with focusing on acquiring things that will make our life easier. The whole point is that when that gets completely the only focus, then you're out of whack. And there's lots and lots of examples in this country and around the world of people who just want to get more for themselves, and even when they want to get more for somebody else, their ultimate motive is more for themselves, sometimes at the expense of other people. And I'm not going to get political. I'm not going to comment on stuff that's going on right now. All I'm saying is that I think we need to move our focus beyond here and move it out there. So if you agree with me, you do. If you don't, you don't. But my hope is that eventually all the human race will realize that it is a human race. And that, yes, there are people with major psychological issues that make this not possible right now. But with our involvement in our science and our medicine and everything, yeah, sometime we'll be able to cure even those psychotic people. I wish you all a wonderful rest of the day, whenever that is. I say take care of yourselves. Please take care of yourself. It's really important. And then take care of others. And until next time, I'll be back about 5 tomorrow evening. Yeah, I should be. And Reverend Lisa will be back tomorrow at 9:15. So that's all I'm going to say. Oh, and if you're still interested in that class, and it's a wonderful class, the Transit Scarcity, starting next Tuesday for the sum of $85 for 6 lessons. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty good deal, I think. It's less than $15 a lesson, so it's a good deal. Text me 832-271-0717, 832-271-0717, or email me dbdewhurst@comcast.net. D as in David, B as in Barbara, last name Dewhurst, DEWHURST @comcast.net, and I will send you more details. So until then, until next time, namaste.